All right. Let's go to the consent agenda.
Well, we got calls to order.
Let's go to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. So welcome to our March 7th, 2022 City Council meeting. For the work session, I'll start with going over our vision statement. So if you've heard this a few times, you can repeat with me if you'd like or read along. Belmont will be a vibrant, multi-generational community that incorporates small town charm and heritage with an entrepreneurial spirit. And with that, I'll go over the items on the consent agenda. We only have 8. The first 3 are minutes. You had a special meeting and a regular meeting on February the 7th. So the minutes for those 2 meetings are in your packet for your approval, as well as the minutes to your workshop meeting on February the 21st. You also have several events. We're getting back to normal, if not back to normal here. So we've got a full slate of events this season. We've got a new one, which is the Belmont Abbey College Homecoming Concert. The Belmont Abbey College wants to hold on April 22nd from 6 to 10 p.m. in Stowe Park. And they are requesting to sell and allow people to possess and consume alcoholic beverages like we do for our festivals and events and concerts. So you've got the ordinance for that. And then keeping with that theme, you have a similar ordinance to authorize the closing of streets, as well as the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the Garibaldi Festival, which will be April the 30th from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. We've done this the last couple times. I don't know when the last time we had Garibaldi Fest is, but I know we've had
2019. It must
yes, have been. And we've had alcoholic beverages at some of our city festivals, and we haven't had any issues with that. And then finally, we have an ordinance to authorize the closing of streets, as well as the sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for the Friday Night Live concert series, which will be April the 29th, May the 13th, May the 27th, June the 10th, June the 24th, and Saturday, July the 2nd. So our big July 4th event will be on Saturday the 2nd, right? That's my birthday. Thank you. And then we are now 5 years into our master services agreement with Kimley Horn for conducting our TIA. So we wanted to renew that agreement with Kimley Horn. As you know, when a development triggers a traffic impact analysis, the city, the developer, Kimley Horn, and NCDOT meet to look at a scope of what the TIA is going to include. And then we signed an agreement with, the city signs an agreement with Kimley Horn. The developer pays for Kimley Horn's work, so there's no cost to the city. Kimley Horn does the work for the city, not on behalf of the developer. And so this process has worked well for us for the last 5 years. We would like to renew that agreement with Kimley Horn. And then I've got some good news that I shared with you on Friday afternoon. The Local Government Commission has reviewed and accepted our fiscal year 2020 audited financial statements. So we're good to go on that. So we've turned the page from that fiscal year to the next one, which is fiscal year 2020-2021. You have a contract and engagement letter beginning on page 61 in your packet from Martin Starnes and Associates to conduct the audit for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Yeah.
And Jared Piles is here if you have any questions on that. And Shelley can answer any questions on the Kimley Horn, and Morgan can answer questions on the events.
I have a couple questions on the Kimley Horn.
Okay. Shelley?
And I think I didn't know what the status was. So you're saying that we have a similar agreement with them right now, and it's about to expire, so we're renewing the agreement?
Well, actually, that's interesting. We do have a master agreement signed. There is no expiration date in the master agreement. However, when we first sent out the RFQ 5 years ago, we said it would be for a 5-year contract. So we kind of kept that tickler on our calendar to reevaluate our current consultant at that 5-year mark, which would technically expire in April if the current contract even had a time expiration. So we could actually, I believe the contract now says that it's just a simple notification within 7 days we can cancel
for cause and 30 days for convenience.
30,
Yes.
correct. So we just have to notify, but we would like to continue with Kimley Horn. Staff
Yeah.
is, we hope that council feels as staff does, is that Kimley Horn has done an excellent job for us over the past 5 years.
Yes, I can only speak for myself, but I agree. My, another question I had, so as I understood it, and as the city manager just explained, we are, ultimately, the developer pays for the TIAs. The contract speaks of the client making payment, and we would be the client, although I think there is something in one of the provisions that recognizes that somebody might make a payment on behalf of the client. I just want to make sure when we agree upon the TIA and the scope of the TIA with the developer, is there an agreement between the city and the developer that obligates the developer to pay for it?
Absolutely. There
okay.
is an agreement, an MOU that's signed. We do not sign the contract as the client with Kimley Horn until they have given us the money and it's in our account.
All right. I mean, that's just, it's like because the developer is not a party to the agreement.
That's
so,
correct.
Ultimately we have to, but we get reimbursed or we get the developer to just make the payments, right?
We collect the money up front.
Okay.
And we hold it into a reserve account until such time we are invoiced by Kimley Horn.
Okay. So
for
we're not
services.
paying. I just, and I knew
We
that.
are
I just
not
wanted to be
fronting the money.
clear.
No, everything's paid for up
Okay.
front.
And I noticed, and this might go back to what you were saying just a minute ago, there's no term in this contract either. So it would just continue indefinitely, or would we revisit it in 5 years, or would it continue indefinitely subject to the termination provision that you referenced of either 7 days for cost or 30 days for convenience?
That's really up to the council. As you noted, there is no termination date in there, so we could visit it periodically every 5 years or sooner if you felt it needed to be revisited.
Okay. Thank you.
And as Shelley said, so the way the money works, once we have an agreed scope of services for the TIA, I have to sign it and the Kimley Horn signs it. And I don't sign it until Shelley's gotten the check from the developer. So there's no net. So the city pays Kimley Horn, but the city will have already received money to offset the expenditure. So we log it as a revenue and an expenditure, but it's a net zero to the city.
So I just have a quick question on item 9. It may be for you, maybe for Parks regarding termination. What always catches my eye is language that is open, I guess, to interpretation, maybe decided by the courts. Substantial failure, that we can sever the relationship if there is substantial failure by the other party. Who decides? What would constitute substantial failure? Is it a legal term? I mean, do we agree among ourselves? Is it something that could go to court?
There's no defined term for that, and it's open, it's a subjective.
Completely subjective? Okay.
Again, we'd have to, we could decide that there's been substantial failure. They could disagree. And then, it's just that risk that if you decide, well, there's substantial failure, so we're going to terminate, and then, there's a dispute and it goes to court and, right, and it goes against us, well, then guess what? We terminated without cause, so we're the ones in breach. So you just got to be careful about that because there isn't, it's in the eye of the beholder.
So basically, we're both Kimley Horn and us, we're in a position of one of us might say this is substantial failure, and all I have to say is no, it's not.
Right.
Okay. It boils it right down to it.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you. All right.
So that's all that I have for the consent agenda. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. All right, let's call a regular meeting to order. You want to
Are
set
we
the agenda?
gonna do that? Is that,
Yes, so if you don't have any questions, then you
Yeah.
can, that's all we have for the work session. So you're welcome to call the meeting to order.
Yeah, let's call the meeting to order. Jim, you want to set the agenda?
I move to set the agenda.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. We're going to get Jim Heffernan to do the invocation, and Martha Stowe is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessings you have bestowed on us. Give us the wisdom and guidance to make decisions for the benefit of the city tonight. We also ask that you work towards the establishment of peace in areas like Ukraine, and that you keep all of us safe and secure in your wisdom and blessings. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we've got a couple of proclamations we're going to give here. Who's here for the one for the narcolepsy? Sleepy Saturday. Not here? We're going to make a proclamation recognizing Suddenly Sleepy Saturday, a day for narcolepsy awareness. I had to do that. I'm sorry. But that's going to be Saturday, March the 12th. Narcolepsy Awareness Saturday. And then we have a proclamation recognizing the month of March as Women's History Month. Anybody here for that?
Every woman in the room.
Nobody?
all of us.
There are several, Mayor.
Yeah.
I know.
Raise your hand.
I know. All right. But that's going to be Women's History Month, adopted the 7th day of March 2022. So all the women, thank you very much for the history. Thank you. And now,
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. We have public comment. We have two people signed up for public comment. Will Newman and Delta Sanders. Will, you got 3 minutes. State your name and your address.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will Newman, 3215 Grange Court, Cramerton. Our business office is 1104 Spruce Street, which is right beside the property that John and Jennifer are working on. And we've been in Sterling Park, Professional Park, for about 8 years, right there with the Carolinas Urgent Care, and we're beside them. We have about an 8,000 square foot building. I'm speaking in favor of this building. That is a very commercialized road with the Spartan Dyers to the south of us, which is right up the hill. North is Walgreens down the hill. East is the Morris at Belmont that's in a big dig right now.
Yeah.
And then we also have, the CVS and Caramont and a couple other healthcare operations on the other side of the street. So this is case ZA 2022.01 Park Street Place. I see this as a benefit to the community. We looked at the building for a long time, 8 years ago, and it took us a while to decide to buy it and renovate it. But we really just kind of ran out of places to look. I mean, there was just nothing else in that kind of Class 1A buildings to go out and put an office in. So I'm hoping that's what John and Jennifer are planning on building next to us, and I'm sure they'll fill it up very quickly. So that's all I have to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Will.
Council.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Next is Delta Sanders. Do you have something from Delta?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Excuse me. Ms. Sanders asked that I read a letter on behalf of Elements of Empowerment because she could not be here tonight, and this is timely. Elements of Empowerment Incorporated sincerely thanks the City of Belmont for supporting the Belmont Juneteenth celebration through the past 2 years of pandemic. We expectantly look forward to returning to Stowe Park for the 2022 Belmont Juneteenth celebration. We will resume the signature festival of music, art, and culture. The week-long celebration will include proclamations, Juneteenth celebration in Stowe Park, a live concert in Stowe Park, a virtual family and friends freedom walk, Additionally, we plan to collaborate with the Downtown Belmont Development Association to add projection art displays and/or other elements to the Belmont Juneteenth celebration. Elements of Empowerment Incorporated hereby request continued support from the City of Belmont, including but not limited to financial support of $7,500, which is a renewed support of $5,000, and additional support of $2,500 for increased event cost. In-kind services by the City of Belmont Parks and Recreation Department, in-kind services by the City of Belmont Public Works Department, event promotion on City of Belmont websites and social media platforms, presence and representation by City of Belmont officials at the Belmont Juneteenth celebration. Elements of Empowerment Incorporated will assume and perform the following responsibilities, including but not limited to management of the event application process, recruitment and confirmation of event vendors, participants, and contributors, marketing and promotion of the event through print, broadcast, and social media, execution of the event with in-kind support from City of Belmont as requested above, and acknowledgement of contributions. Thank you for your consideration of this proposal to continue in celebration. We anticipate your confirmed renewal of our partnership. Sincerely, Delta Sanders, Board Chair of Elements of Empowerment Incorporated.
What's the date on that, Adrian?
June 16th this year will be the event in Stowe Park.
Very good.
Do we want to vote on, do we need a vote?
Because they're asking for more money.
What we can do is put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah,
But
next
is there a
You got
consensus?
plenty of time.
Yeah.
We can discuss it at the workshop if you want to.
Yeah.
We have been supporting it at the $5,000 level, but this is a request for $7,500.
So they received 10,000 recently, is that right? For their online event, did we not grant them 10?
I believe we did because there was a 10-year anniversary video that was an additional expense. I believe that was
That
Last
sounds
year.
familiar, yes.
last
Yeah.
year. Does that
All right.
I think
sound
let's
right?
talk about it at the workshop.
Okay. We'll put on the
Very
agenda
good.
for the workshop on
Yeah.
the 21st, and then consideration for the funding and the support package at your April, I believe, 4th council meeting.
And that will, work for them.
That will work for us.
That'll work for us. Okay.
All right. Very good. Ready?
Okay. Yes.
All right, next we have a public hearing on the Park Street Place. It's on the agenda. Peyton,
I'll move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Oh,
we got a motion to go in public hearing?
Richard
Is there a
seconded.
Seconded already? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in public hearing. Thank you, Peyton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is zoning map amendment 2022.01 Park Street Place. And before I get started, I just want to preface that some modifications have been made to this plan since the planning board meeting on February 17th. And I just want to let you know that I'm presenting on the originally submitted plan first, and then we'll go through the modifications after the planning board discussion. So with that being said, this is a request to rezone 0.8 acres at 500 and 502 Park Street from general residential to highway commercial conditional district to accommodate a professional office/commercial building not exceeding 11,300 square feet. The applicants are seeking relief in the areas of sidewalk width, rear yard buffer width, tree safe area preservation method, landscape island width, parking quantity, and parking lot setback widths. This is located on parcel 305465, and the applicant is / property owner is Cal One LLC or Park Street Partners. Here tonight representing the applicant team is John Turk with Park Street Partners LLC. Unfortunately, Jennifer was not able to attend, but another person on their applicant team, Dimitri Bonches, is here as well. So for site location, this site is just south of Mclean Avenue. So it's at the corner of Park Street and Mclean Avenue, again, just south of Wilkinson Boulevard. The property to the north, located at 506 Park Street, is a current residential structure. And the property to the south is the Sterling Professional Office Park. The properties to the east consist of one residential structure, and then to more to the east is currently the under development, which is the Morris apartment building. It's about 325 apartments. That Mclean Avenue will connect through there, so this site will be accessed off of Mclean Avenue / Wilkinson once that road is finished being built. So the current environmental setting, there's 2 residential structures, primary structures on site with about 3 accessory structures. There is some slight topography. It kind of slopes down to the northeast corner of the site. And there is an existing 5-foot wide sidewalk along Park Street. There is no sidewalk along Mclean Avenue. So this is a little bit interesting on site. There's a brick wall at the corner of Mclean and Park Street. This is a site triangle issue. So anybody who's driving on Mclean trying to turn right or left on Park Street, it's very hard to see traffic as they come northbound along Park Street. We added this as a condition of approval just so we could address this concern. And I'll let the applicants speak on that, but they are in partnership right now with the Morris development to go ahead and remove that wall and better improve the site when you're trying to turn off of Mclean. As for zoning, again, the property is zoned general residential. There's a property to the north, which is general residential, and the one to the east is also general residential. Other zoning around town includes BCD and highway commercial or highway commercial conditional district. Some of the nearby uses include single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, and office space. So this is the originally proposed site plan, an 11,000 square foot office building along Park Street with parking in the rear, access off of Mclean. They're proposing 34 parking spaces and also proposing to use the existing sidewalk along Park Street. As for areas of relief, this project does have quite a few as originally submitted. For the rear yard buffer, our ordinance requires a 30-foot buffer between properties if it's abutting a general residential property, which is the property to the east. However, the applicants are proposing a 10-foot wide buffer with increased landscaping and a 6-foot tall fence to enhance that buffer. As for tree safe area, the applicants are actually proposing 370% of more than the required tree safe area, but they are proposing those to be met solely by using replantings instead of what the ordinance requires, which is at least 1/2 to be met by using existing trees. With the way the site is currently and where the existing trees are on site, it just wasn't feasible for them to save those trees. So that's why they're proposing to do excess replanting to try to meet that requirement. They're also proposing a reduction in sidewalks. So our current ordinance now would require an 8-foot wide sidewalk along Park Street and Mclean Avenue. However, all the other sidewalk in the area is actually 5 feet wide. So just to keep things consistent, they are just proposing a 5-foot wide sidewalk. As for parking, our ordinance would require them to require 1 per 300 square foot of building space. So that using that ratio, they would be required to provide 38 parking spaces on site. But due to the tightness of the site, they're only proposing 34. We see this a lot in infill redevelopment. Sometimes sites are tight and it's hard to get everything on there, especially trying to get a viable product. Same way with landscape island width, they're seeking a 3-foot reduction in that. We would require a 9-foot buffer. However, they are proposing a 6-foot wide landscape island at the end of the parking areas. Again, same situation. This is kind of a tight site. It's only 0.8 acres, so the parking landscape buffer requirement per ordinance would be a 10-foot wide setback along the northeast and south property lines. However, they are seeking relief along the north and south property lines, which would be the sides, and they are proposing 6-foot wide setbacks instead. So as for transportation, we sent this to our consultants at Kinley Horn just to see if this would trigger any kind of traffic study. Based on their calculations, this would not. We also sent this to NCDOT because Park Street is an NCDOT road, and we just wanted any kind of feedback from them. They did not have any comments. And like I previously stated, the site is being accessed off of Mclean Avenue, which does kind of eliminate extra driveways on Park Street.
Okay.
So this is the proposed architecture. The top image is the front elevation from Park Street, and the lower image is the side elevation from Mclean Avenue. This is the rear elevation from the parking lot. So when we look at this project in comparison to our comprehensive land use plan, this is in the mixed use district. So the vision for this category is kind of medium to high residential, commercial, office, and civic uses. Staff felt like this was consistent with the vision because it promotes an office use and supports the auto-centric Wilkinson Boulevard corridor, which promotes a wide range of commercial uses. This is consistent with the goals found in our comprehensive land use plan of land use, economy, and community character. Also, the applicants held their required neighborhood meeting. They held this on January 4th, 2022 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. No members from the public attended this meeting. So, like I previously stated, the planning board did have some concerns that the applicants have addressed, so I'm just going to go through these requests based on the planning board's discussion. So the initial request of relief for sidewalk width, the planning board did not have any hardship with the actual reduction. However, they recommended a condition of the sidewalk aligning with the southern property sidewalk, which would be the Sterling Professional Office Park. They felt as though the planting strip in between the proposed sidewalk on this site should be increased for the intent of public safety, so kind of distancing pedestrians that would be utilizing this site. They did not have any issues with the reduction along Mclean Avenue either. As for rear yard buffer width and tree safe area preservation method, the planning board did support this relief with a vote of 4-2. As for landscape island width, the planning board supported this with a modification with the reduction of the landscape island width. They had some concerns about the trees remaining healthy, so they suggested recommended, a condition of planting appropriate trees with amended soil in there just to preserve the health of those planted trees. As for parking quantity requirements, this area relief was not supported. Some of the board members said the site was just too small, over-designed, and could not accommodate the proposed building with the required parking. They also had some concerns regarding the future tenants and their future business operations. Kind of the same situation with parking lot setback widths. Some of the board members, again, felt the site was too small and could not accommodate everything that was required. So the motion that the planning board made was to recommend approval with the modifications, and that motion tied by 3-3 vote. So the applicant team took the planning board's considerations and they have revised the plans. So as you can see here on site, on the screen here, they have decreased the building by almost 1,000 square feet, so the parking ratio would be lowered. Therefore, the required parking space now would be 34 spaces, and they're actually proposing 35 on site right now. With that being said, parking quantity is no longer an area of relief for the project. As for sidewalk width location, the applicant has realigned the sidewalk, as you can see on this screen, and now it aligns with the southern property sidewalk. And it actually increased the planting strip to about 10 feet in width. Mclean Avenue, that was a little bit of a different story. So after some research, staff looked at the right-of-way. So Mclean Avenue is a 40-foot right-of-way. The paved portion of that does not sit in the center. It's shifted pretty heavily to the south, so that leaves a lot of right-of-way at the northern side, but does not leave a lot of right-of-way on the south. So the applicants did not have much room to have a wide planting strip with the sidewalk. So they are proposing a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 3-foot wide planting strip along Mclean Avenue.
Okay.
As for parking lot setback width, the applicants have adjusted the parking lot location and actually are meeting the required 10-foot setback on the southern property line. But again, because of that right-of-way and where the paved portion of Mclean is, they are still seeking relief for parking lot setback along the northern property line. They're proposing a 6-foot wide setback along that line. So in summary, this is a request to rezone This parcel located at 500 and 502 Park Street from general residential to highway commercial conditional district in the areas of relief for sidewalk width, rear yard buffer width, tree save area preservation method, landscape island width, no longer needed for parking quantity since the applicants have modified their plans and meet our current ordinance. And they are seeking relief in parking lot setback width only along the northern property line. This does comply with all of our other regulations in the land development code. And I just wanted to throw this site plan up there to show the additional landscaping and the landscaping plan, final plan for this project. So I asked the council to receive the report, hear any public comment, and consider the planning board's tied recommendation. City council, as many of you know, has the option to approve as presented, approve as modified, or disapprove the project. And 2 findings are required. This needs to be a reasonable request and in the public interest, and then also consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. Are there any questions?
Can you bring up the elevation from Keener?
Sure.
We went through that pretty quick. I want to see that again.
There we go.
Or Park Street.
Sorry.
Okay, that's showing it on grade with the road. So what's the intent? Because there was some talk about the retaining wall. Is this just for illustrative purposes, or is it going to be on grade with the road?
So I think, and I'm going to let the applicant speak on this as well, but they're just kind of grading out the retaining wall just so it kind of sits flush and more of a, I guess, burn, you can call it, versus a straight wall. And this should kind of be sitting at level, from my understanding.
Okay, I guess follow-up question, different line, 3-3 recommendation. Essentially that's no recommendation, it's a tie?
That's correct.
Okay. Concerns over parking, when they were saying it was over-engineered and they were concerned about the employees, I mean, I guess technically they've met it now with the reduction in the square footage. They're 1 over.
Correct. So the way that we calculate parking for this space would be 1 space is required per 300 square feet of building area. And so when they were initially proposing the 11,300 square foot building, that required them to have 38 parking spaces. But with the reduction of the building now down to the 10,000, it's dropped those 4, which now they only require 34 parking spaces per our ordinance.
When you make that calculation for 300 square feet, what are you allowing for? Per employee? Are you incorporating also, if it's a business, multiple visitors to the site?
Sure. So it's based on use. So in our LDC, it would say office. I think it actually says office/commercial or something along those lines. So it's based off use, and then based on use, there's a ratio for square footage. And so we're using it off of square footage of the proposed building. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to think about it, I mean, uses change.
Right.
If it goes, maybe it becomes retail at some point.
Right.
It's still got to be staffed. And that's kind of an island there. There's no parking except for whatever you put in the back.
Right. And so that is something, so this would be approved, if it is approved tonight, as a shell building. So whenever these suites would come in and apply for their interior renovation permits, we would look at the uses there and just double check that the parking is sufficient.
So if someone who wanted to go into this and start a business, if the use didn't agree with your calculation, does that mean that business can't inhabit that building?
I think we would just need to either work with them, or we would have to try to figure it out at the permitting stage. So, I mean, they're proposing a professional office/commercial. So it's kind of based on this conditional zoning, how it would be conditioned.
Okay.
So if they came in and kind of proposed a different use, we would then have to reevaluate.
You mean any potentially amend the conditional
Correct.
zone?
Yeah.
I.e. come back to the planning board and come back to us?
If it's something
Yes.
totally different.
Yes.
But they are proposing a professional office/commercial building.
And are you? Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. There was some stormwater analysis done as originally constituted, right? because there have been some concerns expressed about stormwater drainage. And so can you go over that
Sure.
in a little detail?
Yeah, so the applicants actually took it upon themselves to do a preliminary stormwater analysis, and that was attached in the packet. Just because this still is a concern for this project, we added a condition that a stormwater analysis for a 10-year storm and a 100-year storm would be required at the construction document review phase. That would need to be approved by our city engineer before the project could get approved construction documents and the project could be built. So Jerry would have to approve that and make sure that everything is okay.
And they submitted with their original application an analysis by an engineer that stated that, what did it state?
So it stated that it did not, which it's let me grab it really quick so I don't misspeak here.
It's on page 109 of your packet.
Yes. Yes.
And there was a lot of attachments.
Yes.
That was Harold Ramsey's old
It says,
house.
I'm looking at it, since the increase of runoff from the site during a 10-year storm is approximately 1 CFS, I don't know what that means, and the absence of proposed development between the site and the floodplain, downstream impact is negligible. Is that,
Right, and that's what they submitted with their
Okay.
application.
do you know whether, I mean, I suppose I can ask them, how that's impacted by the fact that the site design is now changed?
I would believe that would be enough question.
Okay. And just a couple other questions. So, and again, so they won't get a permit unless Jerry, our city engineer, approves the stormwater runoff.
Right, and that was a condition added by Jerry.
Yes.
So,
Oh, very good. So the sidewalk to the south that they're realigning with is a 5-foot sidewalk, correct?
correct.
Okay. And again, the tree save area is going to be much greater than that's required by the land development code. They just want all new trees, not 50% saved trees. Is that correct?
Right, just the way that our ordinance reads for this type of use, you're required to save 50% on-site trees. And while they have those, they're kind of, actually, they are within the proposed building footprint, so they're proposing to do additional replantings to kind of mitigate that.
And can you just explain again I know in response to the planning board's concerns, they are now offering a 10-foot setback, which complies in terms of the southern prop side.
Yeah.
Why exactly can't they do the 10-foot? It has something to do with the right-of-way being off-center.
It is, so Mclean Avenue, if you look at the right-of-way and then the paved portion sits very heavily to the to the south. So that leaves a lot of room to the north, but hardly any right-of-way along the southern property. So there's just not enough room to have the required 6-foot planting strip with the 5-foot wide sidewalk.
Okay. And there was just these drawings here. There was a statement to the effect that they needed, it was going to be 6 feet on both side property lines. I'm assuming that is no longer the case because it seemed to be inconsistent with what they're doing now. I'm looking at
Page 3.
yes,
Page 3. I think
like in the
that
little
was-
box where they explain things.
I believe that maybe was just a mishap in the
I
change
see.
of plans. It's labeled to be a 10-foot setback, and these plans scale out, so they are proposing a 10-foot.
Okay.
It's just mislinked.
And if you say in that same box at the bottom, it says stormwater runoff plan, see civil engineering statement concerning stormwater runoff post-development attached. Is that attachment B?
That is, yes.
Okay. And again, just to be clear, as modified based on the planning board concerns, the current proposal complies with the parking requirements. In other words, they're required to provide 34 spaces and they're providing 35. So they are in compliance with the LDC and they do not need relief in that area. Is
That's
that correct?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Hey, let me ask you one question. On the rear setback, required is 30 feet? So they were requesting to go to 10 feet? So we're going to cede 2/3 of the requirement, and on back there, if I read it correctly, we're going to get increased landscaping?
That's correct. So
What does that mean?
So they're going to do, I guess you could consider it a type A buffer, which is heavily screened, certain plants which help with screening. So because they are trying to get to, or they are seeking that reduction, they're trying to mitigate that with a proposed 6-foot tall vinyl fence and additional landscaping. So it would just be heavier than what we would typically require. And the proposed landscaping plan is as shown here.
And that's, you mentioned the 6-foot fence? Okay. And I believe it said somewhere that if they utilize the full 30-foot buffer as contemplated in the code, they'd lose 35% of their proposed parking area, and it would reduce the building size to an extent that the project would no longer be feasible. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Any more
Thanks,
questions?
Pete. Yeah, we have one person signed up for public hearing. It's Randy Bigham, rather.
Peyton's here. I don't remember a final fence before.
It was in the initial conditions of approval. I don't think that we had actually specified materials, but they are now proposing after the planning board's concerned a 6-foot vinyl fence.
What was the final fence? Towards the building, towards Richardson property.
I'll have to ask the applicant.
It would be space between the curb of the rear property where the parking lot is and the rear property line itself, separated to be able to plant both sides of it.
Both sides of the final fence.
Yes.
That's good. Sorry, I'm Randall Bigham. I live at 15 Todd Street in Belmont. I'm representing Gladys Mildred Richardson, who owns the property at 504 Park Street that faces Mclean Avenue. At the rear of this property we're discussing, she is still opposed to the zoning of the property, wants it to remain residential. She feels that it will be a loss on the value of her property. So whenever she gets ready to sell or whatever, she wouldn't be able to retrieve the value of the property that she thinks it's worth. But she is still against that property and zoning. That's really all I had to say. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. I'm Randy running. Anybody have any other questions?
Well, do we need to hear from the applicant?
Does the applicant want to speak? You don't have to.
If anyone has any pressing questions remaining in the lines, I'm happy to answer anything. Otherwise, I think we've covered most of it.
Okay. No questions for Dimitri, okay. All right. Want to hear a motion?
I just have a few questions about the trees. I know in some of the, I remember I think it was one of the properties we did earlier last year downtown, where we had a similar situation with a commercial property backing up to a residential property. You had the fence and the trees and to provide the screening. I think in that situation, I don't remember exactly if it had something to do with the fence.
I think it was the
maybe.
Imperial Loft.
Yes, that one.
With the headlights and everything.
I think we had specified like evergreen trees. I don't know if that's needed in this situation
Well, we are
or.
doing the fence now, so there actually will be no invasion of line of across from the parking lot to the next door lot.
Okay.
So we've got not only the buffer, but the landscaping on both sides, but the fence itself. So it actually will be a much bigger improvement than what's there currently, which is nothing. So the house that currently sits there now has a building that sits right up on the edge, looking down over the lot below.
Mhm.
The way it is, there's a wall back there. As well.
Yeah.
So we're gonna fix all that and make it look a lot nicer and put in a lot of landscaping.
Okay. That's kind of what the impression I was getting, but just wanted to confirm that. And then I saw there was a comment in your presentation about appropriate species for the landscaping islands. What are we? How are we defining appropriate? Or what is kind of the vision for that?
So, excuse me. So the reason there's a 9-foot wide landscaping buffer is for ultimately tree help and larger shade trees for parking and things like that.
Mhm.
So the planning board made that condition just so we could check whenever they do their construction documents that the species are a little bit smaller and can survive in that reduced width landscape.
Okay.
Well,
That doesn't mean that the species themselves will be necessarily smaller, that they may have a different root ball system, the way that the planter, you can have a very big tree in a 6-foot planter, you can have a very big tree in a 9-foot planter, and vice versa. So we'll choose the trees appropriately.
Right, because I imagine the issue would be having it surrounded by asphalt, and that would kind of limit.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
there's very large trees surrounded by asphalt. It's just the species type, in terms of the heat from the asphalt, so we can take care of all that.
Okay.
Peyton, I want to ask something, because I hadn't thought of it till Mark spoke, but, and I don't want to pick on the Starbucks coffee, but it highlighted something in that, when we're made presentations of the conceptual view of what the property will look like, the landscaping is always shown as fully mature. And, the first thing I noticed when I went by Starbucks is, fully mature is 5, 6, 8 years off, because in reality, what they had planted was little 1-gallon plants. So I don't, when you say they're going to put a lot of landscaping in, I mean, that's all well and good, but if you're going with 1-gallon plants, there's no impact for a considerable amount of time. I don't know if we can condition something out reasonably mature plants and not just, the little teeny things that you can barely see above the ground.
Well, I think that's generally why when we amended the tree protection ordinance, we said that 50% had to be saved from existing trees to sort of alleviate that concern. But that's one of the areas that they're asking for relief from.
So I do see they've got, it looks like a mix of medium and small trees. Is that medium at the time of planting or medium at full maturity?
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was going to say that would be the time of maturity.
So a large, medium, and small tree is dependent on the species and the canopy. So we do have a base minimum when we plant trees, whether they're going to be small, medium, or large, 2.5-inch caliber. So we do have set requirements on the minimum tree size that goes in, but that tree can grow to be a large tree with a 60-foot wide canopy or a 30-foot wide canopy. So just because we're using those terms is based on the right tree being in the right place.
Right.
So
Okay.
the buffer that will be required, again, they're proposing a fence with landscaping. You can't plant too many mature plantings when you start out because they won't hold. We'll go through the arborist and a landscape architect, and we'll also reach out to Keep Belmont Beautiful has been helping out in reviewing some of our planting plans with proposed buffers. So we'll consult some experts to ensure that we're going to get a nice buffer and landscaping, and they'll tell us, what we have minimum size plants, but again, you can't plant something that in 3 years is going to be at maturity. You can't really plant that initially. The roots need to stabilize and such. So we'll work with experts.
Okay.
Is the fence just along the Richardson property, just on the back of it?
That is, which is because it's a residential use.
Now, when you did your engineering study for the runoff, what was it based on, the way the land currently sits now? Because, it's high now, you've got that retaining wall, but again, going back to that rendering, it shows it at grade with the road, so I mean, that's a vast difference that's going to impact the amount of water which flows.
Your question's about runoff?
Yeah.
CFS, by the way, is cubic feet per second, 7.5 gallons, so for future reference. The current site, the way it slopes, most of the water runs off down into the neighbor's yard in the back because it's just a grass slope and the grass isn't very absorptive. When our engineer looked at the grass and what was currently flowing on it, they did the analysis based on preliminary analysis, right? Because this is just a rezoning, it's not the civil engineering documents, saying that the water runoff currently and what it would be after development is minimal because of the way that the buffer is going to be built in the back and the grass area that we're saving and the way we're going to slope the property. So it actually improves the water runoff dramatically from what it currently is in the 100-year event.
Okay, well, that's the back of the property. What I'm trying to get at, the front of the property,
Doesn't
you've got
run
two
to the front of the
different
property.
you've got two different looks. You're talking about sloping it down to the road.
It's going to slope the way the property currently sits. It slopes. Do you have the topo? You guys got to really look at the screen so you can do it.
Oh, my God.
See how it sits? It's almost no slope except for here where we're fixing the side triangle. So this is all going to be gently graded back towards this side where where the topo currently moves, right? So the water will all flow in this direction. It's not flowing in that direction at all.
Yeah.
As the building sits, as the gutters on the roof work, as we do the landscaping and we do the curb lines and so forth, the water will drain basically in this direction. Nothing's going to go in this direction. Right now, it all just drains like this.
Yeah.
And we're going to capture it. It'll have time to seep into certain areas within the plant itself, and then the remainder will go off. There's a detention pond.
There's a retaining pond.
Yeah, there's a detention pond, a retaining pond right here that already captures a lot of this stuff that's coming out, and they're improving it, I think, with the apartment complex.
Yeah.
And it would, whatever, it would still be subject to the approval of the city engineer at such time as you
Right.
want to.
Everything is going to be subject
Yes.
to permits from the city and the city engineer.
Okay. We want to make a motion.
That's all I had.
I'll make a motion to come out of public hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, brings us on to the next item. Consider the adoption of an ordinance approving Park Street Place.
I'd make a motion to approve as conditioned.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
And just a comment, we are fortunate to have experts keep Belmont beautiful now. Susan Wall is our
yeah,
chairman, and she is a master gardener, and she has a really good knowledge of plants, and we're still working with Starbucks to make sure they come into compliance eventually. So she and I have done that. So we are fortunate to have the people we have.
good.
We need
Yes, I know. I'd also make a motion that this is a reasonable request in the public interest and consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and other adopted plans in the areas of land use, economy, and community character.
Yeah,
Second.
amen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Very good. Next item.
I
on
just
the-
want to, if I can, I just appreciate you all working and responding to the planning board's concerns, because I think it made it a better project.
All right, next item on the agenda is consider the approval of the Downtown Business Development Association funding request for Friday Night Live concert series. Bill?
Was you going to introduce?
Yeah. There we go.
So this comes to you as a request from the Main Street program, specifically the Downtown Belmont Development Association, which is the nonprofit arm of the city's Main Street program. They're again requesting funding from the city for the 2022 Friday Night Live concert series, like you've approved for the past several years that the city has been putting on the concerts. It's a little bit hard to read, but you can see the lineup this year. It's 6 concerts from April 29th to Saturday, July the 2nd. The DVDA is again requesting $20,000 to help offset the cost of putting on the concert series. I recommend that if you approve this funding request again, like you've done in the past, then I suggest that we use our revenue that we receive from the ABC board on that. That way it's not coming out of property taxes or sales taxes. And if you have any questions, Phil can answer them about the concert series.
I'm just glad to have it back again.
It's going to be a busy weekend in April. Don't we have the Garibaldi Easter egg hunt and then Garibaldi?
Correct.
Well, the Easter egg hunt, I think, is a couple weeks earlier.
It's earlier.
Yeah.
But the first concert, Friday, April the 29th, is kicking off the Garibaldi Festival,
Nice.
which we're turning more into an arts and music festival. So,
That's exciting.
yes, it'll be a
What you suggest?
busy weekend. A lot of art and music
Megadeth.
in downtown. But I would like to say, we've improved the concerts. We brought in better bands over the years. The concerts, total cost per concert, anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 is what it costs to put on each concert. So 6 concerts that's upwards of $75,000, $80,000 that the DVDA has to raise to put on these concerts. And so when we go out and ask for sponsorships, the number one question is how much does a series cost? And then the second question that we get asked constantly is how much does the city contribute? And so your $20,000 that you contribute is very generous and appreciated, but that helps us leverage receiving other sponsorships from other businesses and corporations, because without the city contributing, we would probably have less and less organizations or foundations or sponsorships. And so that would make putting on these concerts much more difficult. So.
How many companies and sponsors do we generally get outside of the city for the Friday Night Live?
When you outside of the city,
Yeah,
Other than the city.
Other than us
Other
giving
than the city,
$20,000.
we usually get our headline sponsorships are around $2,500, $3,000, and so we usually get 4 or 5 of those each year. Belmont Tourism also is a good sponsor. Some of our businesses also contribute lower level, but a lot of some of the developers in the past have been very generous in coming in at $2,500 and $3,500 sponsors. Mclean Development is usually a really good supporter. Brookwood Homes. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, the first year when we canceled our concert series, we had several sponsorships coming in from Charlotte. And so we're trying to broaden that reach and get more sponsorships.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you can.
Phil, let me ask you, and I'm just curious, because I guess there's 2 different models at play here, but when the merchants were doing this, they came to the city for, basically all the city would do was give them in kind. And they would use their revenues to fund their concert series the next year.
Right.
How does that work with you? Because that's the business model. That's pure business. This is government. Why can we not mimic that model?
I would say the cost of the bands is probably the biggest factor. The beach music bands that they were hiring back then range from $1,000 probably up to maybe $2,000, $2,500. These bands are costing us anywhere from $5,000 to $6,500 to play. The cost of stage has gone up, production gone up. We actually cover the rain insurance. So all those external factors, rain insurance, that's $1,000 to $1,200, $1,400 per concert. Because if we're investing in a $6,000 band, we have to pay them. And we've already, paying deposits. And so if we have a rain out, we want to make sure that we recoup that money. And so I'm not sure, and the businesses, I'm sure they all contributed back then. So I can't speak to, their model, but the cost for these concerts are much more.
What do we usually net from these types of concerts? So I know COVID, right? So we postponed them. I can't remember last year if we did anything, but in a regular
On the back
year,
end, we ended up, usually we culminate on July 4th weekend. We started them on July 4th weekend last year because people started to do things again. And so
Back up.
other cities were doing them and everyone's like, well, why aren't you all? They
that's right.
Yeah.
They had made the decision to cancel rather early, and then they decided to have, so they had some in July and August, if I recall
Right,
correctly.
we did. We kind of canceled, but then we then other, like Jim said,
Restarted it in
community
about
started
3
back
weeks.
up.
Yeah.
So we quickly threw together, I think 3 concerts. Money that was raised from those 3 concerts, the DBA invested into Moonlight on Main.
Right.
Do
you know how-
as
what the-
far as the overall revenue, it really also depends on the support we get prior to the concerts even start through sponsorships. So if we can get significant sponsorships to help cover costs, and then the sale of alcohol, the DBDA uses that money to help offset the cost of the concert. So on the back end, the year before, we could have raised around $20,000, but then the DBDA uses that for paying operations and investing back into the community. And so to your point, if the DBDA took that money, invested it back into the next concert, and the city contributed nothing, we would have less and less other sponsors come in if the city is not going to contribute.
I just think it's funny that you have the name Funky Monks and then Abbey Road right after that.
So
That's
it
funny.
could vary.
So we don't produce any gains after sponsorships and the city's donation. What I'm looking for is what is the alcohol sales? What are we getting from the concerts from a dollar perspective?
It varies anywhere from like $5,000 to $7,000.
Okay, so it's minimal. Okay.
You say per concert? Is that profit, or how do you classify that $5,000 to $7,000?
Profit after we pay for the beer, profit is range from $5,000 to $7,000.
Well, and again, just for my own knowledge, I mean, the beach, I'm just curious, if the beach bands drew huge crowds, and I know we said that when we were trying to put together a concert series, we couldn't get the good beach bands because they were already booked. But if the good beach bands will fill the streets, and it is very popular around here, I mean, why are we going to what I might call niche bands, a particular finite focused following?
The 90s aren't a niche.
If I were to show you the lineup about 2 years ago, the first 2 concerts were beach music, and then we started getting more into the tribute bands. We looked at the DBDA evaluated. We looked at attendance, and we looked at beer sales and revenue that came in. The beer sales much less for the beach music. The beer sales for the tributes and the crowd sizes were much larger for the tribute bands. And so the DPA made the decision that next year to go with all tributes. Because we were also competing with Belmont, now Holly, Gastonia, Bessemer City, and other, all doing these same concerts. And we all have concerts going on the same Friday nights. And the other cities were doing all beach music. So we decided to be different and offer a little more variety in our tribute music. And that bode well for us. So I think our crowds have gotten larger, and we've received good feedback from that.
Thank you. Any other questions? I do. You want to make a motion?
Well, and that is true. We do have a younger demographic that has moved into Belmont, and they seem to really enjoy the tribute bands versus the beach music.
Yeah.
And so for our Garibaldi Festival, we are bringing in some beach music for the Garibaldi Festival. So we're trying to offer a good, diverse and mix. But because of that, the concerts, they cost more.
I'll make a motion to approve funding at $20,000 for the DBDA to be paid out of ABC funds.
I'll second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
While I'm here, can I address a question that was raised about Christmas Village? And so, sorry, when I was snowed in and was not here, a question came up about how much the cost of our Christmas Village that we just recently had. And so the cost of the Christmas Village that we just recently had was around $17,000. We did receive a grant from Caramount Health for $10,000, and the DBDA covered the rest of those expenses. So the DBDA did not receive any costs or any revenue from the city to help put on the concert. Whereas in previous years, we do come up here and ask for a $25,000 sponsorship, 24 for the Friday Night Live, and 5 for Christmas Village. But with the whole transition of concerts, no concerts, instead we did Moonlight on Main, we just really didn't come back and ask for the $5,000 from the city to cover any expenses for Christmas Village. The DBDA had the money from Moonlight on Main and invested money into the Christmas Village. And so the total cost of the Christmas Village, again, was about $17,000, and we did not come to the city and ask for any money for that. So, any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you, Phil.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right. Next item on the agenda is to consider the approval of a proposal for mechanical rods for the Garibaldi Festival event.
Thank you, Mayor. This item comes to you as a follow-up of your January 18th City Council workshop. That was the joint meeting between the City Council and the Main Street Board. And during that meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Turner asked if we could provide the mechanical rides like we previously did, more of festival carnival type rides. And so we didn't have a proposal for that, didn't know what the cost of that would be. So Phil and his team have reached out and found proposals for that. You see that in your packet on page 149 and 150. There's a company called Your Event Source that gave us a proposal. I believe it includes 6 rides, one of the big tall hard slides, and a bounce house. The total cost of providing these types of rides is $27,225. Given that this event is in less than 2 months away, to help finalize all the plans for it and the logistics and the layout, we need direction from the council as to whether or not you want to spend the $27,225 on these 7 mechanical rides, so that we can secure that.
Well, I have some concerns about this. So there are like 8 rides in the packet, right? In the proposal, $27,225 for 8 rides. It's about over $3,403 per ride. If you look at it from an hour perspective, there's going to be 10 hours of Garibaldi Fest, $27,225. That comes to $2,722.50 per ride per hour. I feel like this money could be better spent on infrastructure and roads. Did you not send us in your weekly update a proposal about the bike and pedestrian path on the new Wilkinson Bridge that would cost roughly $28,000 for those improvements?
Yes, sir. That would be betterments for that project.
And would that be classified as infrastructure? I know our federal friends have a very broad definition of infrastructure, but
Our definition is much more limited here, but yes, that would be a multi-use path. That would be bicycle pedestrian infrastructure.
I just think that the money that we'd spend on this would be better spent on something like that. And, I just, residents stuck in traffic on South Point Road, I don't think they're going to care that we've got mechanical rides at Garibaldi. So I just don't think this is a wise use of money.
And if I recall, your recommendation from the staff was if we're looking at a longer festival, that might be feasible to do something like this. I think my concern is the one day, and I talked to several people who have small children, because I don't have those, and asked about the bouncy, different things and stuff, and they said that they like those as well as the other, although we're more used to the old-fashioned hard rides, and they're fun. I think looking at the cost versus the length of the whole situation, I didn't price it for hour, even the math person. I think that we need to look at that maybe long-term for a longer running festival.
Well, I don't disagree with anything Jim just said. I agree with that. But, and I agree with you, the term of the festival has shortened considerably since we had mechanical rides. Garibaldi Fest, if I'm not mistaken, used to begin on a Thursday night, run through Sunday. It was sort of our signature kickoff event going into summer. But for whatever reason, it has been shrunk and shrunk and shrunk to where now, I wasn't aware that it was a one-day event. For some reason, I was thinking it was a couple of days. But I would be open to extending that time period. I mean, that was a good event. But yeah, I agree that amount of money for that small time frame, because that is approximately the same amount that we allocated, and it was some time ago, to that event. We allocated approximately $30,000 in the park and rec budget to secure the rides, but also to keep the ticket, to subsidize the ticket prices, so they were affordable. We would pay X amount of dollars per ticket or whatever. So yeah, I agree. People would look at this and say that is a lot of money to spend for 10 hours for the rides. The numbers just don't work. But if you do extend the festival and bring it back to, what it was originally intended to be, then, you can revisit that and look at the rides, because then the cost per hour drops.
That's good.
Part of what happened is, and just for everybody's ears, is we started adding events. We had Red, White, and Belmont. We had Juneteenth. We had all this stuff. So it started taking time away from Garibaldi Fest, because, they just did not have the budget for all these new events. So they had to take money from somewhere. And the obvious event was to just keep shrinking that event. So I guess that's something we need to discuss. I mean, Garibaldi Fest to me was always something more community-based for the people of Belmont. And I enjoyed that. We used to go every night. And, from where I sit, you may not agree, but I'd like to revisit that and see if there's any desire to increase that time frame. But yeah, I agree. There would, for the 10 hours that we would get out of that, that money could be best used somewhere else.
Do we have a motion?
I just wanted to make a comment, because I do want to agree with Richard there on potentially looking to extend it. I can say personally, growing up around here, I remember going to Garibaldi Festival with the rides and stuff, so I do know that it does have its effect on people in our community. And I was going to ask you, obviously not this year, but maybe in the future, can we look at potential sponsorships to sponsor adding this to Garibaldi? Or
We seek sponsorships for every event that we receive or attend of everything we put on. And operationally, things have changed. Prior to COVID, the rides, the companies, they would come in for free. And we would pretty much guarantee a certain dollar amount of sales. And if they didn't make that, then we would have to pay.
Wow.
And that's the reason. And so in our Garibaldi budget, the last couple of years, we basically have budgeted about $5,000 because we did not have to pay for the mechanical rides, the bouncy houses.
Yeah.
COVID has changed the way that these companies exist and operate. Some are actually closed. So the reason for the dramatic increase is you have to pay them to even show up. And then you can sell tickets for the rides to make up money if you want or not. So that's why the cost is extremely high. If we go to a 2 or 3 day festival with mechanical rides, that cost is probably not going to come down. It will probably increase because they're also factoring in the time for their staff that have to come operate the rides. But if they're here for 3 days, that gives a longer period of time to actually sell tickets and raise money to actually cover the cost. And so regardless if it's a 1 day or a 3 day, we're still going to be in a scenario where we have to pay up front to actually get them here. So if we want it to be a totally free event for the community, we would just absorb the cost. Or if we wanted to have enough volunteers out there selling the armbands, selling the tickets for the ride to recoup the money, you could. And so I just wanted to put that out there. That's why the cost is so high, and we do not have the money in the budget to cover, bouncy houses, really, or rides for this year. So,
Do you have I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but do you have a feel for like what kind of like ticket level you'd almost need to get to make this work? Because I went to one several weeks ago. It was like $5 a ride, which I've got one kid, no big deal. But if you got more than that, that adds up fast.
and in years past, they had sold armbands, and you could buy an armband for like $20 or $25 and ride all day. And so, somebody was at the math, divide that by $25 is how many armbands we need to sell. For some of the other events, it was usually, tickets are, $1, so a couple of dollars to ride a ride or something. So, but I think armband was the way that in years past, where they would, generate large sums of revenue to cover the cost by $25 armband, ride all day for free.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to having the conversation about extending Garibaldi. This might be a good workshop thing. Just my thought.
Well, I mean, for me, I always looked at it as one of our signature, if not the signature event, similar to, I think, Charleston. What do they do? Is it cherry blossoms or azaleas or something?
Oh, Washington had the cherry blossom.
Well, maybe it was azaleas, but I mean, that was kind of, our thing.
Newburgh has an Azalea Festival.
But anyway, yeah, thank you.
Festival in Traverse City.
I'm as nostalgic as everybody, and I'm from Gastonia, and I miss having Fish Camp Jam. So I would suggest that we do that as well, because that was a lot of fun, and that was a weekend-long
They
event.
did have
So,
that.
Well, they've got those catfish races.
yes,
They
the
do at
catfish
the
race
mall
is a big
every
part
year.
of it.
Where?
At the East Ridge, I think, is where they usually do it.
Catfish races?
Yes,
Yeah.
they tried to bring it back, and it didn't work.
You can like sponsor a catfish, and I don't know.
Oh, Lord.
It's kind of weird, but it's fun.
It's local culture.
Yeah, I love it.
But we will be having budget workshops, coming up, so think about that. And our workshop calendar is filling up quickly, so I don't know that we can have a workshop on Garibaldi Fest before the budget, but we can certainly price out an extended Garibaldi Fest and then have that included in the proposed budget for you to consider. And then, we can do as much as you give us resources to do.
Actually, we would love to. Internally, we've been talking about growing it into, a 2 or 3 day music, arts, and carnival fest. So we'd love to have 3 days of music as well. So we can grow it back to several days and have a little variety for everyone.
Yeah, it feels like there's a nub of an idea here that we just kind of need to flush out a little bit.
We'll form a committee.
Oh, that's a government.
that's exactly what we
quintessential
do.
government.
I'm learning.
We got a couple subcommittees too.
And where it goes to die, right?
So it seems like the consensus is not to do it for one day. Do we
Yeah.
even need to take a vote, or just like our sense is that, we don't do that, but explore at potentially another workshop
Well, I
or,
think you were looking for direction. I think you could say that you have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
thank you, Phil.
Okay, thank you.
Is
Is that a ghost there, or is that the wind?
That's the win. I hope that's the win.
It goes to Kiev.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
Next. We have environmental, Adrian, going to take us over the,
Thank you. The next section are committee reports. So you have the draft minutes of the Environmental Sustainability Board, the Belmont Tourism Development Authority, the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, the Downtown Belmont Development Association, the Main Street Advisory Board, and the Planning and Zoning Board for their meetings back in February. So just to let you know what your boards are working on.
okay,
For the manager's report.
Let me ask you one
Yes,
quick question.
certainly.
I think it's the Main Street, page 132, about insurance. Directors and officers insurance, I think you're talking about additional $2 million coverage. What is all that? What is that about?
Phil, can you answer that question?
So the DVDA has two insurance policies. They have an organizational policy, and they cover an umbrella event policy. And because, you know, the DBDA, after Moonlight on Main, getting more, doing more, something happened in another part of the country, then someone questioned, do we have adequate insurance to cover any of our officers in case something more happened? And so that triggered a conversation with officers within the DBDA for us to look into having primary officers insurance, just, you know, in case something happened, that they would also be targeted because they were an officer for that nonprofit organization. And so we were looking into different insurance coverage or different policies for coverage. And so that was something that the officers and the whole DBDA board voted on to look into. And so we're going back and forth with our carrier now on what actually the coverages will cover. That. So they just want to make sure that in case something happened, that our officers would also be covered.
Well, when you say something happened, is this liability or
Yes.
what is this?
Yes.
Liability?
So, I mean, we have an insurance guy and we have a lawyer, but basically, a lot of times if you, if there's an accident or something, they might want to sue not only the organization, but the directors and officers
as well.
individually. And so it would provide a defense to them in their in their
Their official
corporate
capacity.
capacities.
Yeah, in their capacity as a director and officer of the organization. It's a fairly standard risk management practice for nonprofits. Actually, when I heard that we didn't have it, I was a little surprised that we didn't, especially with all the stuff that the DBDA does. And $2 million sounds like a lot, but it's not.
It's not.
Especially recently. So and it's fairly inexpensive. It's like what, $7?
It was like $700, you know.
Yeah.
It was minimal cost.
I think,
as far as
it's
the
pretty
coverage.
reasonable.
Yeah.
It was unanimously voted on by the board, you know, even the non-officers felt like it should something that our organization should have, especially with, and one thing that was talked about with our events and having a train and the tracks running, you know, right in the middle, you know, God forbid something happened. Yeah, the organization, the city, the officers, they would all, you know, just want to make sure we had adequate coverage.
Because
Yeah.
all of us lawyers like to sue everyone, you know, deep pockets, whoever might have the most.
Yeah, I mean, you got to buy your yacht somehow, right?
I'm going to get one on foreclosure
thought-
sale from the Russian oligarch.
The fact that we're serving alcohol makes a big difference too. I know as a venue, we had all kinds of umbrella coverage because even though you've separated with your caterers and your, in this case, vendors and all that kind of stuff, you're still apt to get personally sued. So I think it's totally appropriate. That
And it's the kind of thing that, like, well, if you don't have it and something happens, you're like, oh, we're really up the creek.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I have no objections to it. I was just looking for clarification.
Right. It just made sure that there was extra coverage, especially, you know, since they're doing more.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, if it is so affordable, I mean, and you're saying $2 million sounds like a lot, but it's not. Is that suitable coverage? Or do you,
Because we were increasing our general liability by another $1 million. So had just increased it because of Moonlight on Main. And so because of that,
all right, so this is deemed sufficient. Okay.
yeah, we were originally looking at $1 million and got policy was getting ready to sign after the board voted on that. And then one of the officers questioned, you know, whoa, is $1 million enough? And so they went back and looked at the $2 million policy.
Yeah, we kind of discussed that as a board.
Yeah.
So that was $2 million was kind of what we settled at.
I forget you're on that board, so, you know.
Yeah, we talk about fun things like insurance.
Yes, sir. Any more questions?
No.
So for the manager's report, your March workshop is Monday the 21st at 4 o'clock in this room. And that'll be a joint workshop with the Tourism Authority and I believe the Historic Preservation Advisory Board and the Environmental Sustainability Board, similar to what you did, I guess, in January with the Main Street Advisory Board. You should all have your capital improvements program booklet. Please review that. I'd like to have a discussion about that and a review of that at the April 18th workshop, so that you've got a month to read through all of that. I'm happy to report on a couple capital projects. The new playground equipment that you approved a few months ago is under construction at the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. There was a tree that we planted years ago that was in the way of part of the playground equipment. We were able to save that tree. We got a big spade out there today or yesterday, last week, and was able to move that tree. So that's good. And so that will be a big improvement to the Riverfront Park. We are working on getting started finally on the skateboard park. That's tentatively scheduled for March the 14th to begin construction for that. The Recreation Center is slightly ahead of schedule, and it is should be substantially complete in January or February of next year, and completely ready to be open hopefully by March of next year. So one more year, and as you can see, it's making good progress when the weather cooperates. You've got I passed out the code enforcement report for some of the major code enforcement cases, and Lindsay Yeager is here and can answer any questions you may have about that. Also, just this afternoon, we received an email from the State Department of Environmental Quality, the Division of Water Infrastructure, which handles the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and they have conditionally approved our loan request for just over $15 million at a maximum interest rate of 1.16%. And this is for our Charlotte Water wastewater treatment interconnect project. So this is another step on that long process of connecting our wastewater treatment to Charlotte Water. So that's good news. And then,
Adrian, on that one,
yes, sir.
Was that the deal where we're sending this underneath the Catawba over to Charlotte, all the
Yes.
sewage? And Mount Holly, did they end up also doing this program?
Yes,
Or okay.
Yes, sir. They're farther along because they had a need to be treated more quickly because of
Okay.
their wastewater treatment plant and their growth. So they were at a decision point of having to either to build a new wastewater treatment plant or connect to Charlotte. So they're going first, and then they'll come down and connect to us.
So is the end goal to have all of it treated in Charlotte?
Yes,
And
sir.
sent over to Charlotte? So what happens to our treatment?
So we will convert and that's part of our $15 million. Our portion, I believe, is $8 to $9 million, not to exceed 10 or 11. It's been a minute since I've looked at the numbers. But so the goal is for us, or the plan is, not the goal, but the actual plan is for us to convert the wastewater treatment plant into a large pump station. So we will still collect all the wastewater generated in Belmont, and it's pumped from all of our 23 pump stations. It will still go to the wastewater treatment plant, but instead of being treated on site, it will then be pumped under the river through pipes that Charlotte will build to a large new wastewater treatment plant in Charlotte. Eventually going to the Stowe. They've got a fancy name for it. They don't call it a wastewater treatment plant anymore. It's a new branding for it. Regional Water Reclamation Center. Yes, thank you, Bill. So that's up there near the Whitewater Center.
And then final question, what's the timeline for that conversion of trying to get everything?
So we are on schedule to complete the bid and design package in October of 2023, so a year and a half, and then advertise it for bidding by February 1st of 2024, and to execute the construction contracts by March of 2024. So our goal was to get started construction by 2025, so we're still a few years out.
Okay.
But have been working on this project for 15 years or more.
Long time.
Yes.
Be good for us.
And I know you're new.
No, yeah, that's
We can give you all the history on that.
Adrian, the rate structure for that, how long are we locked in? I mean, there was a period of time where we're locked in at X amount of dollars for the treatment, but beyond that, it's at their discretion?
I will have to review the agreement that council approved about 2 years ago, because I don't look at it every day.
Sure.
We will be charged as a large water or a large user under Charlotte Waters, and my recollection from those discussions is that their cost to treat is much lower than ours, like by a substantial amount.
I remember that.
Can you
That was
send that
good.
information? Because I'm
Yes.
interested in the rate structure and how long we can hold that, and then at what point do they get to decide to renegotiate the rates?
Yes.
So that would be,
We'll be glad to bring Charlotte Water back over and the consultants for that. it is important to remember that Charlotte Water will send us a bill for all the wastewater that we send to them and they treat. You still, as the owner of this utility, you still have the authority to set the rates for Belmont. So I don't know what's going to happen to the cost of treating wastewater over the next 5 to 10, 20 to 50 years. Generally, costs go up. But the way that this works with Charlotte treating both Clarion, Mount Holly, Belmont, and the western portion of Mecklenburg County, they're building what do we call it again? The Regional Water Reclamation Facility will be larger and much more efficient in all new technology. So it can treat wastewater at a much lower cost, particularly if you're looking at per 1,000 gallons, which is our standard unit of measurement. So it is a much more efficient way of treating wastewater. So overall, the cost to treat it will go down. Now, long term, costs always go up, but it will be more efficient. So it theoretically, the cost of treating wastewater in Belmont will decrease. You have the authority to set the rates at whatever level you feel is reasonable.
Is DEQ providing the loan? Is that why they were involved? With
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's with the state revolving. Make sure I say it correctly. The Clean Water State Revolving Fund.
If anyone is interested in touring the area where this Stowe Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility.
Okay, thank you.
They are doing tours this month, and I can send you information. They're public information people have been in contact.
I'd be interested to do.
I would too.
All right, I will send that out for you.
Why not?
We like field trips. But we can definitely have a workshop later this year to get an update from Charlotte Water on this.
Yeah.
It's a huge project, and probably the last time we took it, I don't know, Jim and Mark, if you were on council when we approved the
I don't
MOU.
think so.
So,
No, I think it was right prior to
okay.
that. Like
So
maybe the
probably
summer.
a good update and
Yeah.
maybe some new information. And it's always good to talk about science and chemistry and
Did
treatment.
anybody get the mailer? Had them about a year ago.
Yeah,
They sent out, Charlotte Water sent out.
yeah. I think I just saw it since I never threw
I can
anything
dig it
out.
out. They do public information, and they send it out specifically to our residents to let them know what was kind of going on.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's like periodic, you get information, and then it's dead silence for a while. So they're ramping back up to do some more public information on it as well. So
Yeah, that would be good. It's like a little refresher.
Okay, absolutely. And then just two more things. So as of 4 o'clock on this past Friday, Gaston County closed its upset bid process for selling the Belmont Middle School. The final bid was submitted by Care Partners LLC, and they had the highest bid at $3.1 million. There were no upset bids submitted on Friday, so that process is closed. So that's in the hands of the county now. Care Partners LLC has met with Shelley and her team with some of their initial plans. I think I saw an email late this afternoon that they want to try to get together in the next week or so to go over what they would like to do with the.
Is that the autistic?
So their primary business is therapy and rehabilitation, and I don't know exactly what. It was not on your list of uses that you were wanting to see.
Wow.
So
I guess we'll learn more.
We'll learn
details,
more, yeah.
But they, okay.
So hopefully that will be beneficial to our community. And then I believe I sent this to you in the last week or so. Whenever someone wants to purchase city property, I'll let you know to see if you're interested in starting the upset bid process. Gary Haynes submitted a letter to me in February wanting to purchase 2 vacant parcels that the city purchased in 2016. The properties are actually on Deaton Drive, but they back up to the Damon Point neighborhood on Damon Point Drive. Mr. Haynes indicates that he would like to purchase the properties so that he could build a house for himself and then another house for his son. They're currently vacant properties, and we don't have any plans. We bought properties on Deaton Drive over a course of several years because that was a a neighborhood that we did not have paved street, we didn't have water, we didn't have sewer, we could not provide services, and it was cheaper to purchase all the properties than it would be to improve the infrastructure to serve. And there was maybe a dozen structures or fewer than that. So it's more cost effective to buy all the properties, which we have done. I think all but maybe one or two. And maybe all of them, I don't know. But anyway, that's how we came to acquire these two parcels that Mr. Haynes is requesting to purchase from us. Because it wasn't on our radar this week, this was not included in those city properties that we had appraised last fall. So if you're interested in starting the upset bid process, I would suggest that we get them appraised first so we know what the market value of this land is. He's the only one who's reached out about them, but as you learned a couple weeks ago at the workshop in February, any vacant land that's developable in town will have a lot of interest in it. So although Mr. Haynes has started this inquiry, we would follow the same process that we just learned about through the Belmont Middle School, that would upset bid process. So you could potentially have multiple people bidding on properties to build houses here.
Don't we have to also classify it as supplement or something like that, supplemental land before it goes through that? Isn't there a process before that?
As
We declare
surplus?
No.
That's a
You do not
different
have to do
process.
that. Okay.
This would
But
just be.
Aiden, we'd still not provide water and sewer to this property, is that
Correct.
right?
So this would be property that would have some frontage on Damon Point Drive. So, and we haven't done any analysis on this, but presumably they could get water and sewer from Damon Point Drive side. Otherwise, I don't know how they would be served with water and sewer.
I want to know that before we look at selling the property.
Yeah, I had the same
Yeah.
concern. Did you say that there's not a paved street in there too?
On Deaton Drive,
He owns adjacent property on Damon.
on Damon Point.
Okay. I was trying to get my bearings on this
Yeah,
map
he's
right
a
here.
property owner there now.
You know where Catholic Court is?
You have
Yeah.
a map, and you had a map at some point.
There's a map on page 187 of your packet.
It's a little awkward shape.
Yeah.
See, he owns the property and there's a little,
There's what we used to call a little spike strip. There,
odd shaped lot.
yeah. And so he presumably would do a lot line adjustment so that the city property would then have frontage on that cul-de-sac on Damon Point Drive.
Well, what's the sense of everyone?
I agree with Martha and Mark. I mean, just to nail it down, that there's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Because I know we're generally kind of reticent, but this is an unusual property. I'm glad you explained why we own it, because I was a bit perplexed.
Yeah.
So perhaps we might be more interested than like with something that's like a vacant lot downtown or something. But yeah, I mean, if you all are interested in exploring that, I have no objections to it.
You said we own several other lots along that street too?
On Deaton Drive, yes, sir. Just to the north of,
Yeah, well, I'm looking at it on Google right now.
so there's you'll drive by it and you won't see it. So when the
Yeah,
new
that's
houses that are
exactly
built
what it
on
looks like,
Willarine,
Rough
that are,
road.
yeah, they're between the new houses on Willarine and Damon Point. It's on a hill and it just goes right off, and it's just an old gravel road.
So is that what we're gonna give them praise? Is that what we're?
I don't think we want to do that yet, because if we're looking at that tract of land, we need to go back and review, okay, how do you have access? What's going to have water and sewer? Because the whole reason was that you couldn't have all of that. So I wouldn't want to sell these until we look at, okay, because there are a couple others, right?
There are
Still-
several parcels that we own on Deaton Drive.
Yeah.
Now, these do not have frontage to Damon Point Drive because of, I guess that is Mr. Haynes' house there on page 187. Because his property extends past, it's wider, his lot on the front is wider than it is for the majority of it. It's got that little area that it's basically blocking our property from having access to the paved road of Damon Point Drive and the utilities in Damon Point.
So it would go through his current property, the connection.
Right, so he would need to amend his frontage to give some of that to our property if he were wanting to build it. So our properties currently don't have water and sewer or access on a paved street. But we own enough land in there that we haven't thought about this, but, you know.
If you got a connection, I don't know. If you got a connection to the utilities through his property, would that make the rest of those properties along there usable?
To the right.
Or
Yeah,
is there a way to
that's-
do that?
That's one reason I want to get more detail about it.
And-
Yep,
and-
exactly.
So potentially, if we were interested in selling all of our holdings on Deaton Drive, then you could get multiple houses built and a private developer would put in the roadway and the utilities. And so instead of us selling 2 parcels, we'd sell, I forget how many we own. You know, 10.
Well, it might be better to look at that than selling them piecemeal.
Yeah, because if you could unlock all of them,
Yeah.
that would seem to be the better play.
And this occurred to me, we've been talking about affordable housing. And our only affordable housing development is in the northern
Yes.
end of town.
That's a good call.
We got
Yes,
some
that's,
land.
This would
that's
be
a
a-
really good call.
This would be a great opportunity for some affordable housing in the central part of town.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
convenient access to everything.
Yeah, that's
Agreed.
awesome.
So we're going to find out the information that Martha.
So we'll find out about how it could potentially be served by utilities, water and
Okay.
sewer.
Okay.
And then
very
we can
good.
bring that back to you maybe at the workshop, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
That moves us on.
We'll assign a committee and we'll figure all this
Create
out.
another committee.
Another
I'm
committee.
loving it.
2 committees tonight.
Maybe a
roll.
subcommittee and maybe even a blue ribbon panel with experts.
That's all that I have for you.
Other business, Jim was there as well. We went to the Historic Preservation Advisory Board's roundtable. First of all, I want to say thank you to Peyton and Melissa, who were there on Saturday, so thank you. I thought that event was, it was really good, and honestly, it identified a need, because we had 7 organizations, including our board there, our community board there, and it really did provide a lot of good discussions, and they're hoping to continue that going forward. So instead of having all these organizations so siloed, bringing them all kind of, not together under one roof, but collectively working together for a common goal. So I did want to give that call out, and then also thanks to Jared and his whole team for ironing out this audit. I know that's been a big stress piece for the city, so we do appreciate that, and look forward to getting 2021 completed as well. So that's it.
Richard Turner.
Yeah, Adrian, I saw on South Main that they were working on those drains. I guess that's the paving company to come out to fix that.
Yes, I've let DOT know about that, and
Okay.
I don't know who did that work, but I
Okay.
did see 2 men out there, and presumably under the direction of NCDOT. Because those are NCDOT
Hopefully.
drains.
Um,
Hopefully, it's not.
I don't know. I hope it's not like this. I hope it's not like this guy in these reports from the 30s where he left like the 50 workers and the mules unattended.
Well, I'm glad to see they're addressing those drains because they weren't going to function well
Correct.
the way they were. Now, the people who did the milling, we just laid all that curbing. A lot of that curbing is really new, and they milled it. And for everybody, I mean, that just means their milling machine tried to dig up our curbing on that road instead of just the asphalt. Are they going to address and repair that?
I'm not sure. I
The
follow you,
concrete
because that's a
strip, you
state
got your
road.
curb and whatever that is between the asphalt and the curb, there's a concrete strip there, which they also tried to mill, instead of staying within the confines of the road. So it's all torn up. Do they have any plans to come and address that?
That's a state road, so I don't. I can ask DOT.
Oh, okay, we haven't contacted them about
I have
that.
contacted them about the mess they left and about the drainage issues, and I
Okay.
asked them to clean it up and to fix the drainage issues. I didn't ask about the milling of the curb, but I can do that.
All right, the site for the North Mecklenburg Safety Station, are we moving forward with that? I know there was some talk about identifying
Belmont.
different sites. The fire station, safety
Right.
station, North
Yeah,
Belmont.
North Belmont. Okay.
Yeah. And there was some talk about identifying several sites. Is that moving forward at all? Because we've allocated the money, I guess, for the construction.
Yes, and
$1 million.
we have received the grant agreements from the state for that and the recreation center and the skate park. So yes, we'll start out with the identified site, and hopefully that will work. And if it doesn't, then we'll examine others.
Okay. We haven't identified any yet. We're going to try to see if that works and then eliminate it and then look for a secondary site?
Yes.
Okay.
Was that all you had? Okay. I'm assuming the North Belmont Booster Pump Station is still on track, on schedule?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since we have been talking about infrastructure lately, and as we get into our budget process and capital improvement project process, I seem to recall back when we were talking about the money we were receiving from the American Rescue Plan, that we were going to put like X amount towards like stormwater and sewer improvements. So I'd be interested in having my recollection refreshed about what, since we got our booklets and everything, what are the projects that you were thinking would be addressed by those funds that we might be able to check off our list? Because as Mark and I have, this is our third one now, you start to see some things continually on the list, but never funded. And I did think that there were some of those that we could knock out, like that have been long-standing in terms of stormwater or drainage. So I'd be interested to hear how you think we can address that, what we might be able to check off our list of outstanding projects with those funds. And lastly, since I just got this, I think we might need to either update this flyer that has been going out with our utility bills, because now that it's March, when it says effective July 1st, I think that's ambiguous as to whether it went into effect last July 1st or it's going into effect this July 1st. So
Okay. Can I get a copy of that?
Only attorney could.
that's that we're still getting this new billing dates, and
I got the same thing. I was like, I didn't realize we're still sending that out.
yeah. Or maybe we should just, it's been almost a year now. We don't need to send it out, but I think it creates confusion since it's now March, whether this means it went into effect last July 1st or it's going to be effective this July 1st. You'd think people would know, since they'd have gotten this like 5 or 6 times already, but
Can I
They
get
might
that?
just be sending it out because they're having issues.
yeah,
Thank you. Thanks.
yeah. All right, well, that's all I had.
All right. I want everybody to please keep people in the Ukraine in your thoughts and prayers, please, because those people are having such a hard time. They're bombing cities left and right. A lot of innocent kids getting killed over there. There's no reason for that. No reason for that. Just greed and meanness. That's all it is. So hopefully we can get that resolved pretty soon. Martha?
I'm glad to hear about the skateboard park, obviously, and what they're referring to. And if anybody would want a copy of it, I'll get you one, about what the city council in Belmont was responsible to do back in the 30s, and with regard to dancing at the community center and all that kind of thing. So much different situations from what we're dealing with now. So that's all for me.
I just had a question because I noticed on the code enforcement update for 202 and 204 Hawley Avenue indicates that the owner has fled the country, which I'll admit I have mixed feelings about, that our code enforcement is apparently so fearsome that it's driving property owners out of the country. But I'm just curious how we go about, because I noticed there's some notes in here about notice and whatnot.
Yes. And the Nixon Avenue one on the other side is the same way.
Yes.
That they're not responding to letters.
So everybody be calm. We've got our ferocious code enforcement officer.
Hide your passports.
So apparently, of course, I've had trouble getting a hold of the owners of both of these properties. Well, there's 3 total. And I've been reading on the general statutes and following the guidelines of what they say. And basically, if you can't get a hold of somebody who owns the property, you have to, as a last resort, put it in a newspaper. And they have so many days, it has to be posted so many days in a newspaper. And they have so many days to respond before the city can actually take over and do what they need to do. But without that due diligence, it could turn into a huge lawsuit, of course. So that's kind of what the next step is for that. And with the Nixon Road, I've been working with some of the Gastonia city officers to try to go, because he actually lives in Gastonia. But every time we try to make contact, he either doesn't come to the door or he's not home. And I want to make sure I have his signature showing that we have notified them that we know what our plans are. Just to cover ourselves, you know.
Can I ask one question? So on the Wilkinson property, I have noticed, I think over the weekend, they were doing some work on that property, on the dormers. I don't know, maybe they covered up some of the siding.
The
Card
The
reader.
card reader
Yeah.
prop.
we are still waiting on quotes from different contracting companies to give us for demolishing. Now, when we approved the demolition, there was nothing that says they have to stop doing anything. So when it comes to that point, once we get the quotes, I guess we'll reassess the situation to kind of make sure we're still, you know, in the guidelines following with demolition.
Because we had a situation last year before you joined us where we approved a demolition ordinance in North Belmont, and the guy sued, and then the case kept getting continued because of COVID, and by the time it was like teed up, he'd actually done the improvements. So,
And so we didn't-
we entered into a settlement that, you know, ended up dismissing the lawsuit. So, you know, because there's a legal issue here too, isn't there? Because there's an argument, and I don't know how strong it is, but that one of his permits is still valid because the governor extended the permits through the state of emergency, and we're still, yeah, never ended, which is about to hit 2 years, I think sometime this week. But there's at least an argument that one of his permits might still be valid.
So what does that mean to us then? Although we've issued the order and we're getting estimates, we may not be able to proceed?
Ultimately, that could be, you know, where we stand when that time comes.
Well, let me ask you, what determines that? I mean, once we get our quotes in and he's continuing to build, I mean, how do we look at it at that time? I mean, what would constitute he's done sufficient work to where we no longer need to demolish it, although there is a standing order to demolish it?
So it would come to a point where if he has met all the requirements and he's no longer against any ordinances, we wouldn't really have warrant to do that, to demolish it.
So the goal obviously is to get buildings into compliance with our ordinance. And so if he continues to make improvements, at least at the front part of the building, then you've got a viable building that's not in violation of our ordinance. And we wouldn't just go tear down somebody's building.
Right, man.
Wasn't the
because we
rear
can.
of the building, what was the
But
issue?
the rear of the building is still where we have the majority of the concerns, correct?
Okay.
And so it could be that the order is sort of reduced in scope from the entire structure to just the portion that's still out of compliance, which would really be the rear part of it.
It's just events might overtake what was originally approved.
Right.
Because of all this weird
Because
things
things
going
change.
on. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
That's an interesting situation.
It is.
I mean, you're deemed to be outside of the law for not being in compliance, but you can ease into compliance. And then the decision is vacated.
We would bring it back to you and probably,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
probably only recommend that you demolish a structure that's in violation of the ordinance, not demolish a structure that's in compliance.
Because this one's gone on for,
Yeah.
That's an interesting political theory or law theory,
Legal.
legal theory. I mean, if you could have broader terms, you could say, yes, I was speeding, but I am now compliant. I am within the 35-mile-per-hour zone.
Thank you very much for all your hard
You're
work, because I know it's not an easy job. That's-
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Lynn.
you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Be quicker.
I know, I gotta work on this.